All right, well, I hope I pressed those at the same time, but knowing me, probably didn't. So what's going on? It's Robby Rowland on the mic. I'm trying to, I do this all the time. I have a new setup. I'm in my office, and I have a GoPro that's going to film this entire podcast on Winterball prep. But it's really high up there, so I'm having to like kind of hurt my neck to get up there, and then I kind of get away from the mic. But that's super irrelevant stuff, and we'll get to the irrelevant stuff now. All right, we are going to talk about my preparation to play this winter. There's going to be a couple different dynamics that we'll touch on pertaining to the adjustments that I'm going to make within these next couple weeks. We're going to talk about the repertoire adjustment, talk about the mechanical adjustment, talk about like kind of goals and so on and so forth. I think I did the same thing last year. I also want to bring on Jeremy Machino again for him and I to have actually like a legit conversation. Might as well podcast it as well. So it's a win for everybody, but I want him to come on and talk more like the data analytics and stuff like that. I'm just going to talk about like the simplistic stuff behind what I'm going to be focusing on. Yeah, I really don't like that tripod that's holding this GoPro. So for those of you guys watching this on YouTube, you're going to see this glove. All right. This glove right here just got out of the box yesterday. My boy Kurt Smith started up a company, Dream Glove Company, and I customized this glove, and I've never seen anyone else do this design with lime green, kind of like a neon on black and red. I think, and the inside is what would you call that? Yellow, tan, light tan, I guess. I don't know. But for those of you guys just listening to this and you want to check out the glove that I'm wearing during this podcast, you can go over to the show notes and have the YouTube link available. Sad story about this glove is I filmed an unboxing yesterday at the park, and apparently I didn't film it because I went back to the SD card and it wasn't even on there. So I was really upset about that because the unboxing dynamic is kind of really fun for me to record. It wasn't even on there. All right. So might as well go ahead and sponsor this episode there, bud. Sponsored by Dream Glove Company. We'll throw the links in the show notes as well, so you guys can check them out. I'll talk to Kurt about getting maybe a discount code for you guys. Maybe, hopefully. That'd be cool, right? All right, let's go ahead and dive right into it. So this is going to be kind of like a piggyback episode off of the season recap episode that we did last week or whenever that was. So without diving into too much context pertaining to like my last season and how I am as a starter, even though we are going to talk about a little bit about that because it's necessary to do that. The biggest thing going into Winterball that obviously is the change is starting last season, now relieving in Winterball. Okay. So I'm not really sure like what my role is. Typically it's kind of, I've been everything out of the pen over there. I've been a long guy. I've been a kind of a bridge guy. I've been a 8th inning setup guy. I've closed games. So I'm in kind of just preparation for, 2-3 innings and then have the ability to kind of close games out. The role that I actually like the most is like that late inning, 8th inning setup guy. So if that could happen, I like the 9th inning too. But now, how does it change personally from being how I am as a pitcher this past season as a starting pitcher? So I said this in the last podcast episode. I don't know what it is about me. I love starting, but as a starter, my stuff, my like repertoire, my just overall nastiness definitely takes a hit. And I don't know, it could be a number of different things. I think the underlying issue for me as a starter is I am consciously thinking, and I'm consciously active in thought about flipping lineups over and pitch sequencing and all these other kind of different dynamics that are, it's not necessarily a bad thing to think about, but I do think for me personally, that takes away from just the overall stuff. And the fact that I have to go deep into a game. So there's maybe that subconscious voice in my head saying like, hey, don't blow out. Like, I don't even recall one time this past season as a starter where I was like, I'm going to throw this ball as hard as I can, even though I don't know what would happen, honestly, if I did do that. But so moving into kind of these bulleted points that I do have in terms of Winterball prep. And I want to, before we dive into this, I do want to say I'm filming all of like my preparation content, like my training stuff. So you can go on YouTube. I'll try to include a link as well. And I guess I could put a playlist together, but there's training, preparation, and then there's throwing. So the day that I got home, there was 35 days. So we're doing like I have a calendar here in front of me. We're doing like okay, so today is October 2nd. Today's day 13 of 35. All right. So then I have like kind of a goal orientation set up for, okay, well, on Thursday the 7th will be day 18 of 35. That's kind of like the halfway point. So I want to have a bullpen that day, and I want to be able to see, can I sit 93? So the first day we got on a mound, we looked at like all the metrics, we looked at the velocity and all that stuff, and we're just going to try to go up from there. So if you guys remember, or if you guys have followed me since this past off season, when I was doing Winterball prep in 2020, it was kind of the same thing. Like velocity was the biggest thing that I kind of wanted to get out, and you can see just in a month span before I left, I think it was like the month of October. So this month, last year, it was like started at, sitting 92.5, and then got it all the way up to the last pen that I threw before I left was, I think, 96.5. So just having, I say this a lot too, guys that talk about like, how to train velocity, like track your velocity. And I think there's something to it, man. There's something big behind just having something in front of you that says, okay, I was this hard, this day. And then 4 days later, like that, like it's very valuable. And I think it's just, as a competitor, it's something to shoot for and really take advantage of when you do go out and train, right? So that gets us into the first bulleted point is velocity. Okay, so as a starter, I was literally like 90, 93, and that's not going to cut it out of the pen. And I know that, and I think I have a pretty good sense of how to increase that. And like I said earlier, I believe a lot of it for me personally is just a mental thing. Like out of the pen, everything's simplistic. We'll touch on that here in a little bit, but that simplistic allows for overall freedom, and that freedom allows for like a lot of not even effortless, but a lot of effort in power output. And, if all things go according to plan here within these next couple of weeks, we'll see the velocity. Hopefully I want to leave here. So I'm supposed to leave, I believe, around like the 24th or 25th of October. We have a 2-week training camp, and then games start like on November 8th or something like that. So by November 8th, game 1, I want to be able to sit like 95, 96. Okay, so mid to high. And before I leave here, I want to be at least showcasing that, right? Showcasing that I could get there. I had a mound day yesterday, and I believe I was at like 93.5, or I don't think I hit I think I did hit a 94. So we're at 94. But the whole thing for me is like, can we sit there and stay there? So velocity is going to be the biggest piece. You can look at all of my content on how I'm training for velocity. And, all the things progression wise that I'm doing in training, with Dr. Heenan, the, advanced therapy performance team. Shameless plug. I can save you $100 if you shoot me an email, contact robbyrow@gmail.com. I'm getting good at that, but he sent me a new program. We're going 4 times a week in the backyard training lab. And, again, you can see all that content of what I'm doing on YouTube. But training's solid. And then from a throwing standpoint, obviously we're going to increase the intensity of our long toss and our pull down phase. I'm not going to touch weighted and underload balls this time around. I did that last year, and I don't even know if there's anything in particular of the reasoning why I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to do that. That's all I got for you. All right, second bulleted point in terms of the Winterball prep and things moving forward is the simplicity, okay? Simplicity is like kind of my key word for just life. I need to be better at it. I'm a very complex person living in a very simplistic world, or maybe the opposite, other way around, who knows. Simplicity in the mechanical realm and simplicity in my own personal repertoire. I keep having to like look up to the camera, and I'm going to stop looking up, to be honest. I really don't like it. So I'm just going to look aimlessly at the screen in front of me that shows nothing. So simplicity in mechanics, what does that look like? So as a starter, that was kind of something that I grinded with at the beginning of the year because I hadn't started for a while. So I was trying to find something out of the windup. I have a pet peeve with starters going out of the stretch. I don't know why. I can't really explain that to you either, but I just do. So I knew that I wasn't going to do that. So I had to find something from a windup standpoint that was comfortable. And then once I found that, it was like, oh, frick, I forgot the stretch thing. And there was a lot of things that I just felt that I needed to change coming off a good Winterball season in 2020. Because if you guys remember, like my delivery out of the stretch in Winterball was like pretty aggressive and pretty energy opposite of sufficient, right? Like it was a very high exertion delivery, high leg kick, and max effort, a lot of different things. So once I found the delivery that I felt comfortable and had the ability to repeat as a starter, now it's kind of time to change all that. So I'm going to take a lot of things that I took from the previous Winterball season in 2020 that helped have a pretty good year and helped accomplish some of the goals that I had in terms of power output and pitch consistency. So we're going to go back to I would call it like a simplistic delivery out of the stretch. Hands high. I know a lot of people on Instagram were asking questions about that. Like, does hands high come back? Like, because as a starter, hands low. Just to kind of briefly explain my not my understanding, but my thought process behind that and what I had kind of seen just by practicing before the actual season that I left for 5-6 months ago. I don't know. I guess it's longer than that. But the hands high thing, I was going to stick with it as a starter, but I just quickly realized that as a starter, like I was throwing multiple pitches that I don't throw as a reliever. For example, like, curveball, changeup, cutter, and I think hands as high as I had them, and I tried modifications, and it was kind of hard for me in terms of inconsistency getting into that release slot to do that with 5-6 different pitches. And I just felt like, the hands low, I was already in that pocket, so to speak, with everything. And I guess that would be a very simplistic way of explaining it. So what hands high, I believe, allow me to do, and again, when we talk about the throw and mechanics and all that, it's all kind of personal preference and there's no absolutes or whatever, but something that I've felt and have seen is as hands high allow this sense of delaying mechanism with my hands that allow me to almost trick my hand, my arm into having to generate like pretty high amounts of speed to catch up. And I know this is like a kind of a double negative with what I talk about with my clients, but there's this sense of, having to doing things that force your arm to speed up. Right. And we talk about like arm drag being late, being early and all this stuff. This is more advanced that I kind of don't want to get into, to be honest, if in case there's like a 14-year-old listening to this that thinks he's going to have to do this. But just something about hands high just helped me feel that. And the hands high allow me to feel like a deeper sense of that elbow getting into retraction as upon hand separation. There's a lot of mechanical things, I guess, better described maybe in person. Maybe I can talk about that on camera. So the simplicity and the mechanics, we're going to go from all stretch, a little preset turn with the dry foot because of that aggressive leg lift kind of is already going to set me up to turn the foot. So I might as well just preset it there. I did that last year. And then the simplicity of the repertoire I talked about as a starter. I have this sense, and this is the reason why I have the sense of the starter to throw 6-7 different pitches is because I find joy in that. All right, let's leave it at that. I find fun in that, so we'll leave it at that. All right. The simplicity of the repertoire in Winterball, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the curveball. I changed the grip a little bit. For those of you guys watching on YouTube, you can check this grip out. I used to have this spike thing, but it was just way too inconsistent. Like I would throw 1 in every 5 that were good, and can't really afford that out of the pen. There's no really point in that. So yesterday, I threw some in a live AB where I just kind of keep the index finger down, and the middle finger is on the seam and it's pulling down on that whole seam. Thumb is kind of swallowing the ball. I know there's a lot of people that tell me to get the thumb out of there, but thumb for me is my guide. Curveball is not going to be good out of the pen. All right. I may throw it once a week, but it's something maybe I could throw 0-0 at 70 miles an hour. That is a drastically different look, and maybe it can open up the top of the zone. With that new grip, even though it's more consistent than the spike, I'm not seeing that under 630 axis that's going to allow me to mirror my fastball effectively. For those of you guys who've been following me, you know that my fastball, especially out of the bullpen, is going to be a high vertical, so a lot of fastballs up in the zone. We'll touch on that here in a little bit. So 4-seam fastball, and then slider and splitter. I got to a point recently, you'll see this on all the content on YouTube, but I got to a point where I feel like the splitter's coming back. And for me, the splitter, to create a better feel for it, I've just kind of started to move my fingers closer and closer to the 2-seam. So I can have a slight sense of feeling the ball, or feeling my fingers behind the ball. Obviously with a split, when you release it, that's the thing that they say is harmful because you don't have anything behind the baseball. But I used to kind of fork ball it almost, if you will, like this. Again, I know guys on YouTube are seeing this, not you guys that listen. But now I've just kind of switched it to where my fingers are just outside the 2-seam. And something about the thumb on and just having feeling of this seam down here just feels comfortable. I don't know why, but there it is. And maybe it's a good kind of guideline for me with that thumb on that seam to know exactly where I need to place that ball. So right now it's kind of neat. It's a totally different pitch, to be honest, from a metric standpoint that I'm used to. I threw one 90 miles an hour yesterday in my pen, which was, I don't think I did that once in 15. And then the slider. So this is a whole nother dynamic that I think I touched on in the recap video or in the recap podcast, where like now it's the process. I did this the previous season before Winterball. It's the process of blending my cutter that I use as a starter and the slurve that I would use as a starter. We're going to blend those two in. There's a video that I'll publish probably within the next week or so. That's going to be very, very good in terms of, like showing you the behind the scenes, if you will, of what I do from the slider pitch design standpoint, and having the Rapsodo and the Pitch Logic available to do that, and been throwing with the Pitch Logic basically every day on flat ground just to kind of fight for the exact metrics that I want. And again, Jeremy, hopefully he can come on and we can talk more analytics and stuff behind that. But we're going to blend those two. Found a little cue yesterday with this slider here. Again, guys on YouTube, if my cutter is like this across the 4-seam, the low seam 4-seam, and my slurve was like hooking this right here, then I want to blend kind of the grip in the middle of that. So I'm tight. I'm going to close my fingers instead of keeping them a little bit apart. And then with the thumb, something I found out yesterday in mound work is if I can kind of put my thumb and place it, instead of tucking it, if I can place it kind of in the center of the ball, how I do with my cutter, I can create a little bit more velocity. Now, the thing for me, and Jeremy will attest to this, is we want to kill as much spin efficiency as possible. We want to increase the velo, probably 90% of the fastball velo, whatever that is. And the tilt spin axis of that is the one thing that I'm struggling with right now. The more that I try to throw it hard, the more it blends back to that cutter, like kind of 1130, 1145 spin direction. And the more that I wrap and tuck my thumb, it'll drop like to 830 and get too slurvy. So I think it's just more reps. Once I create more reps, more feedback, and every day is like a learning curve with that. So the simplicity of the repertoire, mostly 4-seam and slider split, and like I said, maybe an 0-0 curveball here and there doesn't hurt, especially if it's coming in at 70. The thing that I might run into the problem with, and this is me probably overanalyzing and articulating the simplicity of getting guys out, is everything that I'm going to throw at guys is going to be hard if I don't throw that curveball. So for example, if things go similar to how they went last year, 95 with the heater, 85 with the slider, and then this split, like I said, I threw 190 the other day, so that's going to be very, very similar to the 85. So having something that I can throw 70, 73 can be effective in terms of timing, get that in the hitter's mind. Even if I don't throw him one, maybe, he's watching warm-ups and signal a curveball. It could always be in the back of his mind. You never know. And then lastly, to piggyback off like the velocity and the fastball standpoint, get really, really good at the elevated cheddar. All right. That's kind of the go-to. As a starter, I definitely, I would rate my performance from the elevated cheddar standpoint as a starter absolutely horrendous. Something about going back to being a starter this past year just made me just throw fastballs down in the zone. I don't know. And I'm still going to be able to hopefully do that out of the pen, harder velo, but also, have an ability yesterday. I was really pleased with yesterday's mound work because like I said, we did live ABs instead of like a sim game with my brand manager. And every fastball I threw was actually higher than the target. And that's a huge win, honestly. So that's going to be a driving point moving forward is the elevated cheddar. Might even throw, like if I need to, might even throw a bullpen and like have Pops or whoever can maybe catch it, just stand up the whole time and go like 15 fastballs, like at the, at the chest, just to get that feel off a slope. And there's something, for the guys on YouTube, you'll find maybe a little bit of value out of this. So there was something that I found the other day. Let me move the mic up right there. Now there's obviously like that's whiteboard marker on my finger. There's been a lot of stuff that I've done on like finger and thumb placement and finger pressure and like the actual grip of a four seam, trying to trying to manipulate spin rate in some type of way. And I think I found a sweet spot with, the seams, how there's like that middle piece to it that hooks to the other seam of the baseball, having like the pressure of the two fingers kind of pulling in the middle of that kind of allows for a little bit of increase of spin. Yesterday, I was like 2350. On the ones that I didn't do that, I was like 2100. That's a pretty significant amount of spin, but there's a lot of variables that go into that. So who knows? But what I found is when I'm like hooking and pulling that middle of that seam and I'm trying to go a fastball elevated, then it's hard for me to pull down on a seam and still elevate the ball out of my release slot, which is probably 6'7", I think 6'8", maybe 6'9" on some occasions. So something that I did the other day was I just went completely under the seam, like to where I'm not hooking anything. I'm feeling a little bit of seam on like the top of my fingers here. But now when I throw this ball, I'm like pressing the seams like away from the fingers and I'm not pulling down on anything. And I did see a decrease in spin, but I saw a super much better consistency in the elevated fastball, because like the elevated fastball, again, from my release slot being pretty high to pull down on a seam and still elevate it is pretty tough. So I went under the seam, still with the same amount of distance between the two fingers, and the thumb placement still under the ball in the middle of the two fingers if you were to split the ball in half. And that gave me, like I said, a much better opportunity and ability to elevate the ball. So something moving forward, if there's anything that I'm struggling greatly on with the elevated cheddar, then I could kind of remember that and see how that'll play. I'm going to bang the changeup, but I'm also not going to, that wasn't going to be a good sentence. I'm going to bang the changeup from throwing it in a game. Like I'm going to go there without being like, hey, I throw a changeup. But my splitter has been known to just disappear on a lot of occasions, like out of nowhere. So I'm going to constantly throw, I think every catch play, like 2 or 3 changeups. Look at this grip. This thing is freaking, I need to do a video on my changeup grip because this thing saved like my last 3 outings. Pulling down on that seam right there. I'm going to throw a couple of an outing just to create the feel, or just to have the feel still, and just to remember that grip, because if the splitter just disappears, then I can kind of just go to this, to maybe kind of bridge the gap there. from the fastball being elevated and the slider running glove side, maybe just have something that could, speed up a bat. So that's what I got in terms of Winterball prep. As I've mentioned multiple times, there's a lot of content on YouTube already from Winterball prep standpoint and going to be on YouTube. I can even maybe put together a web page, but that's a lot of work, and I'm still trying to finish my book before I leave there. The Complete Guide to Pitching Mechanics hopefully will be done before I hop on that flight to Puerto Rico. For those of you guys listening that want to watch games, I think you can do that over Facebook. I'm going to be with the Indios de Mayagüez again, so be sure to check that out. Just Google it, I suppose. And that's all I have for you. I will include the Dream Glove Company links in the show notes, along with the YouTube content that I mentioned multiple times. So that is my preparation, plan of attack moving forward. Hopefully we can get Jeremy on the podcast within the next couple weeks and take a little deeper dive into the analytics and where my metrics should go and so on and so forth. But from a personal standpoint, that's where I'm at in terms of Winterball prep, things moving forward. As always, much love. God bless. Thank you guys for listening, watching, whatever you consumed, however you consumed. Sweet. Neato, gang. Love y'all. Let's do this. That's loud. See ya.